to this.
So we're on Yud Dalet and Beis 14b. I imagine it's 14b at the end of the first power, beginning of second power. Basically, the two dots that are in that's the fifth to last smaller line, or as I call them, the skinny lines. Back in school. But
yeah, that's 14b2.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So 14b squared. Very good. But Tamai Sha'achal Sakosh. So before we actually, do you want me to intimidate all of you before we start the summit? I think I said this a few times, but this Amud similar to last time we learned together. If you can remember last time we learned together before my whole life went upside down, but for good reasons, thank God, for good reasons. So we did an entire Amud on Yudalim and Aleph of going back and forth saying, well, that rabbi learns that idea from that pasuk. So what's the other rabbi do with that pasuk? He used it for this idea. Where does he know that idea? Remember we did all that? And we had a chart. So I want to show you. Let me bring it up for a moment, just so I can intimidate all of you. I can scare you. You see this chart over here? Yeah. So this table, this is what I made when I was learning the Gemara, so I can keep track of the psukim and what the psukim are being used for. And you can see we're going to have a machlokes, Reish Lakish, and Rabbi Yochanan. We're going to have a number of different psukim, as well as a gezerah shava, a hekish, different kinds of hermeneutics to derive ideas. And there'll be some agreement, there'll be disagreements, and it's all going to be tons of fun. So if anyone wants the chart, I'll send it to you afterwards. I'm not sure. I don't think I can share it in the chat. I don't think it lets me share. No, it doesn't. I don't think it does. Nope. Okay. So I'll send it to you afterwards. So this Amud, again, I was going through my Gemara and I found this sheet of paper in here. Apparently 3 years ago when I last learned Makkos, I also had to make myself a table to understand this Gemara. And it's the only Amud in my entire Gemara Makkos where I did this, just to give you an idea. So now that I've given you all hasra and I've warned you, you know what you're in for. It's up to you to see if you're going to go forward, and then we could give you guys all of the wonderful Makkos that you don't deserve. So let's do this. We learned in the Mishnah 2 cases. Remember in our Mishnah a while back, we were talking about all the different all the different kinds of sins under the sun that one can commit that will incur Malkus. We didn't enumerate all of them because God knows there's too many sins that can incur Malkus, but we listed it was a pretty good list. You know, we covered a lot of areas, sexual sins, Tumah and Tahara, Kashrus we talked about. So we really covered different areas of halacha. So the cases we're going to be focusing on tonight from the Mishnah is, one case is somebody who is tameh and enters into the Beis HaMikdash while he's tameh. You get malchus for that, as well as kares. And as you know, for those of us who are with us for Yoma and Mishnah's Yoma, we are very familiar with that principle. That's why the Kohen Gadol needs to go to mikvah before he enters the Beis HaMikdash. The second idea, the second sin that was mentioned in the Mishnah, is somebody who is tameh, ritually impure, and he eats something that's hektish, some food that is consecrated. So either eating it, or we'll see, I'll spoil it for you now, touching it perhaps, we'll talk about in the Gemara, is something that will also incur malchus. Eating will incur malchus with kares. Touching will only incur malchus, but we go easy on you. You don't get the kares. So you see, we're very magnanimous and very flexible for you. Okay. So let's start the Gemara. V'tamei sha'achal es hakodesh. Hektish. Bishlama habala mikdash tamei. So remember, the first case we talked about, somebody who's tamei and comes to the Beis HaMikdash. Siv onesh uksiv asar. So remember, it's very important. In order for a sin to incur malchus, there needs to be a verse which is an azhara, which means it tells me, thou shalt not commit X deed. That is a sin. And then secondly, I need a second verse, which is the onesh, which says, and someone who commits this deed, they get X punishment. If I only have an ashara, a warning telling me not to do something, but I don't have the onesh spelled out in the Torah, the punishment spelled out, or a verse at least implying that there's a punishment, then I'm not going to receive Makkos for that. So what the Gemara wants to figure out is, for these two cases, coming to the Beis HaMikdash when I'm tamei and eating hektish. So, okay, very quickly, just make sure we got the terms down pat. Some of these are things that I think most of us know already, but I'll just review them just so I don't have to translate them throughout the whole shiur. So if you got a pen and paper, if you want to write it down, you can go for it right now. All right, Beis HaMikdash is our temple, and hektish is consecrated food. Okay, and then truma we'll be talking about in the Gemara as well. Truma also has a degree of sanctity. That is food that is given to the Kohanim as a gift. It's part of our Yisraelim taxes that we have to give. Okay, so those are some of the important terms that we have to know. And again, ashara is a verse telling me not to do something. Onesh means a punishment. It's the verse telling me the punishment. Okay, so any questions just on those terms? All right, so that's what we got to know. So Bishlam Mahabala Mikdash Tameh, regarding somebody who comes to the Beis HaMikdash when he's Tameh, Ksiv Onesh Uksiv Asara. We have scriptural support for both the Onesh and the Asara. Onesh Dichsiv, Es Mishkan Hashem Timeh V'Nichrasa. The Onesh is pretty explicit. It says somebody who defiles God's abode, he will receive kares. Very explicit. Ashara, where's the ashara? Lo yitamu es machanehem. You shall not defile their camp, referring to the camps of the Levium, which was the paradigm for the future Beis HaMikdash. Great. Not disputed. We have beautiful, explicit sources telling us that one who goes into the Beis HaMikdash while tamei defiles the Beis HaMikdash, incurs kares, incurs Makkos, everything's hunky-dory.
You need a warning.
We got both. We got ashara and we got the onesh. So we have both verses. However, good point, Z. But what about eating hektish when I am tamei? So that, as my grandfather pointed out, we are lacking a verse. Ela tamei sha'achal es hakodesh bishlama onesh ksiv ha'nefesh asher tochal basar mizbeach Hashem asher Hashem tumaso alav v'nichrasa. We have a verse which says you get kares if you eat hektish while you're tamei. Ela asar minayin. The Torah tells me I get punished, but the Torah never told me not to eat hektish when I'm tamei. So we are missing a verse, and so our Gemara needs to figure out, where do I know in the Torah, where the Torah does it tell me that thou shalt not eat hektish while they are tamei? So it's going to be a machlokis between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish Omer, b'chol kodesh lo siga, that the verse that says you shall not touch anything that is kodesh while you are unholy, that is the ashara that tells me you shall not eat hektish while you are tamei. Now, I think maybe some of you are already picking up on this. It doesn't say in the verse, thou shalt not eat. It says, thou shalt not touch. So if you were thinking that, very good. You were mechavi to a stage later in the Gemara where we actually will derive both touching and eating from this verse. That's my spoiler right there. We'll get to that soon. But at this stage in the Gemara, this verse is here to teach us, according to Reish Lakish, that one who eats hektish while they're tamei has committed a sin. Good. And Rabbi Yochanan Omer, Rabbi Yochanan provides a different source for the ashara for eating hektish while tamei. Tani bardala asya tumaso. What he does is he utilizes a gezerah shava. Gezerah shava is, again, if I have two different mitzvos or averos in the Torah, and I use the same terminology It's there specifically to show that they share similar parameters, they share similar dinim. So asya tumaso, the word tumaso appears in two places. Siv hacha v'tumaso alav v'nichrasa. We have the mentioning of tumaso in the context of eating hektish while tameh. Uksiv hasam, and we also have a mentioning of tuma tameh tumaso bo in the context of someone who goes to the Beis HaMikdash when he's tameh. Malahalon onish v'ashara, avkan onish v'ashara. So Rav Yochanan says, we can extrapolate from entering the Beis HaMikdash when I'm tameh. Just like in the case where I enter the Beis HaMikdash when I'm tameh, I get Malkus, I get Kares, I get all the wonderful things. So too, we can extrapolate via Gezerah Shava, via hermeneutics, via drasha. We can extrapolate and apply it to one who eats hektish while he is tameh, that even though there is no explicit Azhara in the Torah, we don't need a Azhara. We can use the Gezerah Shava to borrow the Azhara, to copy and paste it from entering the Beis HaMikdash while I'm tameh to eating hektish while I am tameh. And that is stage one of the Gemara. So again, what I'm going to ask actually for my own benefit, there's a whole train of thought to this Gemara. I would say if there's anything that is just very unclear, I don't do a sufficient job explaining a step in the Gemara, please stop me, and I want to make sure each step is clear. But for general ha'aros, we'll save that for the end. Just you'll do me a favor for my own benefit. Okay? So is there anything that was unclear at this point that we can make sure is clear before going forward? Okay. So now, right, Reish Lakish and Rav Yochanan, they use two different, they agree. They both agree that eating hektish while I'm tameh is punishable with malchus and kares. But why did they have to choose two different methods to get to the same conclusion? Did they just arbitrarily pick two different methods? Or perhaps there is a logic to why Reish Lakish used an explicit verse of B'chol Kodesh Lo Siga, and Rav Yochanan had to use this whole Gezerah Shava to reach the same conclusion. So Bishlama Reish Lakish Lamar Rav Yochanan, Gezerah Shava Lo Gamer. So Reish Lakish, okay, he just doesn't actually agree. Maybe he didn't have a Masorah, he didn't have a tradition to make a Gezerah Shava. Because you'll find many times in the Torah, there are many times that there's repetitions of words and phrases, but you can't just go ahead and make Gezerah Shavas on your own. You need to have a Masorah for that. So perhaps Reish Lakish just never had a tradition for such a Gezerah Shava. Therefore, he had to find an explicit verse in the Torah which told us that one who is tameh cannot eat hektish. El Rav Yochanan, my time Elomar Reish Lakish. Rav Yochanan, Reish Lakish has an explicit verse in the Torah that tells me don't eat tameh don't eat kodesh while you are tameh. Why do you have to make this whole convoluted, well, not convoluted, but why do you have to go out of your way for Gezerah Shava when I have an explicit verse in the Torah, which is much easier and much more intuitive? So Amarlach, Hahu Azhara Litruma. So what does Rav Yochanan have to do? Rav Yochanan, actually, he can't use the verse. He necessitated a Gezerah Shava because he uses the verse of B'chol Kodesh Lo Siga to teach me that one who touches Truma while tameh is punishable. So if Rav Yochanan uses B'chol Kodesh Lo Siga to teach me when I touch Truma that it's punishable, Reish Lakish Asar L'Truma Minale. So wait, but where's Reish Lakish then? What verse does he use to teach me that I'm not allowed to touch Truma while I am tameh? So now, this is the ping pong match here. Nafgale mi ish mizera aron v'tzarua ozav. He derives it from a verse which talks about any man from the children, or any person actually, for the children of Aaron who is Tameh is punishable. Ezu davar shu shava b'zar shel Aaron. Well, what is an area of halacha which applies to all the children of Aaron, even to the women are not Kohanim, but what benefit does a woman have to being a Bas Kohen in a household? She gets to eat Truma. Or if she's married to a Kohen, she gets to eat Truma, right? So Zidi Bubby will get to eat Truma via you, even though she's not a Bas Kohen, she's not a daughter of a Kohen. By being married to you, she gets the benefit. So what area of halacha is shava, is equal for all members of the Kohen family? Havi Omer zo Truma. Reish Lakish uses this verse, Ish Mizar Aaron, to teach us that one who touches Truma will be punishable. That's what he uses it for. Sorry, for Achilas Truma, for eating Truma. Let's get to the end of this section of the Gemara. Okay, so then what is Ravi Yochanan going to do with this extra verse? Hahula Achila v'halanagia. He uses B'chol Kodesh Lo Siga to tell me, literally, I'm not allowed to touch Truma while I'm Tameh. And he uses Ishish Mizera Aaron to tell me I'm not allowed to eat Truma. Now you might ask, wait a minute. If I not allowed to touch Truma while I'm Tameh, certainly I can't eat, because per force by eating, I'm touching, right? I have to pick it up in order to eat it. So perhaps the nafkamina is in a case where if I just open up my mouth and then somebody drops it right in, once it's already within my body, that's not called touching it anymore. So there's two isurim. There's touching Truma while Tameh, and there's eating, there's consuming the Truma while Tameh. So that brings us to the end of that section of the Gemara. Okay, anything that is unclear that we can clarify at this point? All right, I hope our heads aren't spinning just yet, because we're about to go a little deeper down the rabbit hole. So Rav Yochanan is in good standing right now. We understand Rav Yochanan has adduced different forms of either explicit scriptural support, or he's used different forms of exegesis, such as Gezer Shava, and we're actually going to see a Hekesh later on. You see, look at me, I'm able to, I think those are the terms our art scroll uses, right? Scriptural support and exegesis. I think so. Okay, you can tell me. Anyway, for Reish Lakish, but Reish Lakish is still giving us some issues, because Reish Lakish, we're going to see in the Gemara, he has two disagreements with Rav Yochanan, where Reish Lakish believes that there's Makkos for a few additional cases. And Reish Lakish is going to be hard-pressed to find additional psukim in the Torah to support his very stringent approach to requiring Makkos for additional sins that Rav Yochanan doesn't agree to. So Reish Lakish is going to be the prime focus of our analysis for the remainder of the Gemara, but we'll bring Rabbi Yochanan in as the foil when necessary. Reish Lakish, hi b'chol kodesh lo siga. First words on the line. Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish, hi b'chol kodesh lo siga lahachi udasa. Is it coming for that? You want to tell me that b'chol kodesh lo siga teaches me that it's usher for me to eat something that's kodesh while I'm tameh. Rabbi Reish Lakish already has to use that verse to teach me I'm not allowed to touch something that's kodesh while I am tameh. To itmar tameh shenaga b'kodesh, someone who's tameh that touches kodesh. Reish Lakish omer lokeh, Rav Yochanan omer eino lokeh. See, Rav Yochanan doesn't have an issue. Rav Yochanan holds touching truma is aser when you're tameh, but touching general hektish when you're tameh is not problematic. But Reish Lakish says not only is eating problematic, but touching hektish while I'm tameh is problematic. Reish Lakish omer lokeh b'chol kodesh lo siga. He uses the verse b'chol kodesh lo siga that you shall not touch kodesh while you are tameh. tell me that I'm not allowed to touch. But Rabbi Yochanan Omer ein lo ka'ahu atzar l'shmohu da'asa. And Rabbi Yochanan, as we established earlier, he used v'chol kosho siga to teach me an asara regarding not touching truma. But the question stands: if Reish Lakish uses v'chol kosho siga, thou shalt not touch hektish while they're tameh, to tell me not to touch hektish while I'm tameh, where does he know that there's also an isser to eat hektish while I am tameh? So here we're going to have to use a hekish, which we'll explain what that is momentarily. Tameh shenaga b'kodesh mid'afki rachmana v'lo shenagia. Okay, so let's look at the pasuk. The verse says explicitly, "Do not touch." Okay, so we're going to use the explicit meaning, the simple meaning of the verse to teach me I should not touch kodesh while I am tameh. But then, ashar la'ochel, where do I know that I'm not allowed to eat kodesh while I am tameh? Iskush kodesh le'mikdash. We have to use a hekish, because if you look in the pasuk mentions, it talks about eating, and then afterwards it says, and you shall not go to the mikdash while you are tameh. So because touching kodesh and entering the mikdash, entering the temple while I am tameh, are juxtaposed next to each other in the verse, it's no coincidence they're put in the same verse right next to each other. It's a hekish. A hekish means that if I have two things right next to each other, I can learn from one thing to the other. I can extrapolate rules from one to the other. So just like in the case of entering the temple while I am tameh is punishable, so too eating kodesh while I am tameh also is punishable. There's no explicit verse that tells me that, but rather we use this hermeneutical method called a hekish in order to derive from the fact that entering a temple makes someone culpable and incurs punishment. So too eating hektish while tameh also incurs malchus and kares. Okay, so that's number one. Okay, so this part of the Gemara was, again, we said originally Reish Lakish used b'chol kodesh lo siga to tell me I can't eat truma. Sorry, I can't eat kodesh while I am tameh. But then we said, what do you mean? He uses it to tell me I'm not allowed to touch kodesh while tameh. You're right, that is true. He uses rather a hekish to tell me that I can't eat. But in the end of the day, touching and eating hektish while tameh, according to Reish Lakish, is asur. According to Yochanan, only eating but not touching. So that is their dispute. But the Gemara is not happy leaving Reish Lakish alone, because it would seem that Reish Lakish still needs the verse of B'chol Kodesh Lo Siga to teach me a different halacha. So he cannot use it to teach me that you're not allowed to touch Kodesh while you're tameh, because I have something else to use it for. Very good. So again, those who are in the Mishnah, the daily Mishnah crowd, you will recall, I hope so, we talked about it quite a bit, that part of the offering, part of the ritual of offering an animal is that there's zrikas damin, that they collect the blood from the animal and they pour the blood on the corner of the mizbeach. So one might think that the hektish is only truly hektish, that I would incur a punishment for consuming it while tameh only after the blood is poured, only after that step in the ritual process. However, Reish Lakish argues on Rabbi Yochanan and says, even before zrikas damim, it's kodesh enough that I would be punished if I ate it while I was tameh. To itmar, tameh sha'achal basar kodesh lifnei zrikas damim. If I eat kodesh before the zrikas damim, while I am tameh, before the blood is poured. Reish Lakish Omer Loke, Rabbi Yochanan Omer Ina Loke. Reish Lakish says I get Malchus, or Yochanan says I don't. Reish Lakish Omer Loke, Bechol Kodesh Lo Siga. What verse is Reish Lakish used to support this special halacha? Bechol Kodesh Lo Siga. Thou shalt not touch while tameh. We needed that verse to teach me in general I can't touch something while I am tameh. I can't touch hekdesh while I'm tameh. So loshon of leisrika, loshon lacher zrika. Rabbi Yochanan Omer, Rabbi Yochanan tameh. Damar krat tumaso tumaso. Chiksiv tumaso lacher zrika hudiksiv. And Rabbi Yochanan again earlier, he uses the gezer shava of tumaso. And based on Rabbi Yochanan's learning from tumaso, there's no mentioning of before zrika. Everything takes place after the pouring of the blood. But the point is that I need b'chol kodesh lo siga to teach me I'm not allowed to touch hekdesh while I'm tameh. But Reish Lakish is already using it for the next step to teach me that halacha applies even before zrika is done. But where do I know the halacha to begin with that I'm not allowed to touch hekdesh while I'm tameh? Before we get to that special corollary halacha that, by the way, not touching hekdesh while I'm tameh also applies prior to zrika stam. So to that we answer, hahini b'chol kodesh nafka. So it says b'chol kodesh lo siga, thou shalt not touch. That teaches me, do not touch hekdesh while I am tameh. But what's the implication of b'chol kodesh? The word b'chol in the pasuk was put there specifically to teach me hekdesh, no matter which stage of the process it is in, whether it's before the zrika stam, the throwing of the blood, or before the zrika stam, even before the pouring of the blood, I will be subject to Makkos, and I'll get punished for it even before zrika stam. So b'chol kodesh lo siga teaches me not to touch while I'm tameh, and from the word b'chol in b'chol kodesh teaches me it doesn't matter which stage the hekdesh became hekdesh. It's hekdesh nonetheless. I'm not allowed to touch it. It's consecrated. I can't touch it while I'm tameh, and that is punishable. Okay. This last part of the Gemara actually is pretty straightforward because we're just going to now quote a brisa which supports Reish Lakish. So what we're about to read in the brisa actually just reiterates what we said earlier and actually might serve as a somewhat of a summary. And don't worry, I plan on actually outside going through everything that we just said. So we'll do that at the end for just so we make sure we have everything. So Tanya Kavase de Reish Lakish, we have a brisa that seems to be in accordance with Reish Lakish. L'chol kodesh lo siga asara la'ochel. Atomer. Sorry, did I just miss the place? Okay. Tanya Kavase de Reish Lakish. L'chol kodesh lo siga asara la'ochel. Atomer. Asara la'ochel ino el asara l'nogea. Maybe it's an ashara not for eating, like we first thought, but it's an ashara for even not touching hekdesh while I am tameh. So Tamalomar bechol kodesh lo sika mikdash makish kodesh lemikdash ma mikdash avshishmon tias neshama. Just as entering the Beis HaMikdash is something that incurs kares, that's what we mean by netias neshama. Netias neshama means like death. On Shabbos, you do netilas neshama, that's a malacha of killing an animal. So in the Beis HaMikdash, if I enter it while I'm tameh, not only do I get malchus, I get kares. So what's something else that would give me kares? Touching hekdesh is not enough to give me kares, but eating hekdesh is enough to give me kares. So I've called the Rishish for netilas neshama. So if we can't use the hekesh to teach me that I should not touch that which is holy while I am impure, so we use the hekesh to teach me I cannot eat hekdesh while I am tameh. And that brings us to the end of this very fun, interesting, intriguing, challenging section of the Gemara. So what we're going to do now is we actually have one last little piece to do, but it's a new sugya. So what I'm going to do is two things. I'm going to pause right now for anyone who has any pent-up questions that they've been holding until this point. And then afterwards, I will do a complete review of everything we just said in the Gemara outside. And then we'll do the final piece of the Gemara, which is really is just opening up the sugya for, God willing, next week's share. Okay, so if somehow you were able to jot down questions while also following the Shaka Tataria of the Gemara, Yasher Koach, you have much more mental capacity than myself. The floor is yours. Okay. I think most of us are, I'll speak for myself, saying, Dayenu if I get the whole Shaka Tataria of this Gemara. And again, I know it's like our first week back on. I don't want us to be discouraged. This is I found this to be a very challenging Gemara. I had to go over it a few times just to make sure I followed the back and forth, and I had to literally chart out the whole thing. I have to do that. At least our Gemaras in Makkos. So okay, you'll forgive me. I didn't write this in English because, it's kind of hard to put it all in English. There's so many verses. But for those who can kind of like read my handwriting, I will show you what I did over here. And for those who can't read my handwriting, you can listen to me out loud as we review everything we learned in the Gemara in one brief and hopefully clear synopsis. Here we go. So just to orient ourselves, we have the Reish Lakish column over here. We have the Rabbi Yochanan column over here. So the first thing we want to know, which the Gemara told us everyone agrees to, is that we have a verse of Es Mishkan, etc. I didn't write the whole verse, V'nichrasa, and V'lo yitamu es machanehem. This verse over here serves as an ashara for not entering the Beis HaMikdash when I'm tameh. The second verse, Lo yitamu es machanehem, serves as the onesh, the source for the punishment for someone who's abal mikdash tameh, one who enters the Beis HaMikdash when they are tameh. Great. Reish Lakish and Yochanan are in agreement so far. But then things start to get a little bit complicated when we want to find out what's the source for it being usher for me to eat hektish while I'm tameh. Well, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish do start off in agreement. They both agree that the source for the punishment is Ba'nevesh asher tochal, etc. while you're tameh. The nichrasa, you get kares. So we have a source which tells me that I get punished when I eat hektish and I am tameh. But then, what is the source for the azhara, where the Torah tells me I'm not supposed to eat hektish while I am tameh? So initially, Reish Lakish uses the whole kodesh lo siga to teach me that I'm not allowed to eat hektish while I am tameh. But as you can see, I put a little bit of an X over achal, over eating, because actually in the maskana, in the conclusion of the Gemara, the chol kodesh lo siga, because it's don't touch, teaches me I'm not supposed to touch hektish while I am tameh. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan uses the verse of the chol kodesh lo siga to teach me that it has nothing to do with touching hektish, but to teach me I'm not supposed to touch truma while I am tameh. And so coming back to Rabbi Yochanan, so where does Rabbi Yochanan know that I'm not supposed to eat hektish while I'm tameh? He uses a gezerah shava of tumaso from mikdash to kodesh. Just as in the entering the Beis HaMikdash on tameh, I incur punishment, kares and malchus from that. So too, when I eat hektish while I'm tameh, I also get punished for that. And then, and over here, I put a non-applicable under Reish Lakish, because Reish Lakish, as we said, doesn't accept the gezerah shava of Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, so that's what we do with the gezerah shava. Then what about the verse of Ish Mizera Aaron, each person from the children of Aaron? Okay, Reish Lakish and Yochanan are actually in agreement again. We get a little bit of a break. They both unanimously agree that we use this verse to teach us that eating truma while you're tamei is punishable. We're almost at the end, but if we recall, at the end, Reish Lakish wanted to teach us two different halachos. And because Reish Lakish wanted to teach us two new halachos, we need two other sources. So here we have a hekesh of Kodesh to Mikdash. The connection between Kodesh and Mikdash actually teaches me that eating hekdesh while I'm tamei is punishable, because in the end of the day, we use B'chol Siga to teach me touching hekdesh while tamei is punishable. So we needed a different verse of a hekesh to teach me that eating is prohibited. And then finally, remember, Reish Lakish says that you're punishable for touching hekdesh even before the stage of Zrikas Damim, of the spilling of the blood. So for that, he doesn't bring in a new verse, but rather it's an inference from the word B'chol Kodesh. Kodesh at any stage renders you, makes you violate the prohibition when you touch it, when you're tamei. And that is basically the synopsis from the Gemara to the best of my ability. Again, even with that chart, it's still complicated, and I'll be honest, I still try to wrap my head around it. I'm sure there's some people out there who've done a better job explaining it than me, but I hope we got something out of that. Okay. Any questions on the synopsis? Yes, Judd. A brave man.
It's really a general question. By what authority does Rav Yochanan have to accept a Gezerah Shava and not the other? If you establish a Gezerah Shava, why doesn't it stand on its own? Why is it okay to dismiss it because you want to take another position?
I'd make your question even stronger. So Judd's asking, it seems almost arbitrary. I like that Gezerah Shava. I'm not really feeling it. What are the criteria for determining what's legitimate Gezerah Shava and what isn't? So if it's a matter of tradition, Masorah, it's a funny thing because Rav Yochanan and Reish Lakish, Yochanan was the Rebbe. So you would think Reish Lakish's Masorah and Rav Yochanan would be in sync with one another. It's not like they didn't know each other. They did come from different places, but they learned together all those years. So actually, I think I have the Mesivta edition of the Gemara right here, actually. So if you give me a moment, I think there actually was a note where he says why he didn't accept it, but I am not seeing it right now. Just a moment, if that's okay. Okay. So Lomar Kar Yochanan. Okay. So the question actually is raised that really Reish Lakish, how can Reish Lakish, the question is even stronger. Reish Lakish was Rav Yochanan's student. So Rav Yochanan presents a Gezerah Shava. Reish Lakish, you would think, since he gets the Masorah from his Rebbe, Rav Yochanan, he should accept it. So Mishum Shekasu Tostos B'Shavish, Shayim Akubal B'Yadam Minayin HaGezerah Shava Sheish B'Torah, Mini HaGezerah Sheish B'Torah, V'Zem Yikalat HaGezerah Shava Azo, Nimtza Min HaMakubal B'Yado Eino Nachon. So apparently there was a Masorah out there for how many Gezerah Shavas exist. And so Reish Lakish, it's kind of like we know there's 613 mitzvos, but there's kind of these arguments about how we classify the 613 mitzvos. So there's a certain amount, we don't actually know the amount, I think, of Gezerah Shavas out there. And so Reish Lakish, if he accepted this Gezerah Shava, would have to deny another Gezerah Shava out there. But again, that doesn't fully get to your question about why this one and not the other one. I'm not clear on that. I'll have to look more into it. I have a feeling the Kash is better than the Teretz, as they say. So it's a good point, Jeff.
Fair enough.
All right. Okay. Any other questions on this section? Wonderful. We're making good time. we have one last piece of Gemara we're going to do together, and it's really just opening up the sugya for next time. There'll be a little bit of this next week, but honestly, what we're going to be doing next week, I think will be a little bit closer to what we're accustomed to, much less ping pong next time. So I just want to say, getting through Yudal and Beis, I consider to be a huge milestone in Makkos, and if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. Okay, except for maybe there is the Yam Shel Shlomo sugya, which pops up in different places. So anyone who's ever learned in Maseches Sukkah, it talks about a circular sukkah, and then there's comparisons to the Yam Shel Shlomo, which was the bath that Shlomo Melech made in the temple, and it was circular. So you have like all this Gemara going through mathematical calculations of so like, you know, it was square on the bottom, was circular over here. So how do you measure that thing? If you measure it that way, then how does that measurement compute? It was that probably was the hardest Gemara I've ever read. But okay, enough of that. No more intimidation. We made it through. Next part of the Gemara, Amar Rabba, second line from the bottom. Amar Rabba bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kol lo sasa shekadmu aseh lo kenalav. So we might be familiar. We already learned about alav hanitek la'aseh. Alav hanitek la'aseh is I violate a prohibition. So let's say I violate the prohibition of nosar. I have 2 days and 1 night to eat a carbon shlamim, I believe. If I do not eat it within the requisite amount of time, then I am obligated to burn the remainder. So there's a lo saseh, do not leave it over. But if I violate that prohibition, I can somewhat rectify it by performing a positive mitzvah say, of burning that which I should not have left over. So we say, even though in general I should really get Makkos for violating a certain prohibition, if the Torah gives me an aseh afterwards, a positive mitzvah, we view it in a sense as almost somewhat rectifying the sin, and thus I am exempt from Makkos. But what about the reverse case, where it's an aseh, a positive mitzvah, followed by a negative commandment? What would the halacha be? So Reb Yochanan says, Kol lo sasa shekadmu aseh lo kenalav. If there's an aseh followed by a lo saseh, a negative commandment, you get malchus in such a case. Amar lo amrit. They asked the Reb Yochanan. They checked in later on. Rabbi Marachana said that Reb Yochanan said that. They asked Reb Yochanan, "Did you really say that?" Amar lo, I never said that. Amar Rabba. Rabba responds, "Elokim Amra. By God, you said that." Uksiu Tanina. Not only that, but I have scriptural source for it as well as a source in the Mishnayos. Siva v'yisholchem min hamachana lo yitamos machaneim, because it says someone who's tamei should leave the camp. That's an aseh, a positive mitzvah, and it says afterwards lo yitamos machaneim. You shall not desecrate, you shall not defile the camp, referring to the Beis Hamikdash area. So that's an aseh of leaving, followed by a lo saseh of not defiling the sanctity of the camp. And we just spent the whole sugya before talking about unequivocally that if I go into the Beis Hamikdash when I'm tamei, what do I get? Malchus and kares. So that's a pretty good source for an aseh, a positive mitzvah, followed by a lo saseh, where I get malchus. That's what we just learned about. And Tanina, Abba Mikdash Tamei. And what Mishnah, where in Shas do I see a Mishnah that tells me this case? It's our Mishnah. Our Mishnah tells us someone who goes to the Beis Hamikdash when they're Tamei gets Malchus and Kares. And so Rabbi Yochanan says that an aseh followed by a lo saseh incurs Malchus, but nonetheless Rabbi Yochanan seems to have retracted that position, even though it's well supported. And why did he retract such a well-founded position? Well, I have to leave you on a cliffhanger, because that's what we're going to, God willing, explore next week. Yasher Koach, everyone. We made it through Yudal Beis. It should be, God willing, smooth sailing. I mean, there will be challenges, but that's learning. That's Melchamta Shel Torah. That's why we're Osek B'Torah. We not only get schar for learning, but we get schar for the Yagia and for the exertion that we put in as well. All right. Yasher Koach, everyone. God willing to see you next week, if not before then.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.